The secret of getting ahead is getting started. Good morning, everyone. I, Akanksha, the coordinator of ComVerse, welcome you all to the 16th episode, The Gig Economy, a brief look through. ComVerse is a discussion forum organized by the Department of Commerce. ComVerse was started with an intention to improve public speaking and debating skills among the students of BCom department. The association organizes panel discussions on current affairs, whereas the students themselves are the panelists, to present complicated and intricate matters through easily understandable medium by holding discussions about various topics that pique the interest of the general population. The conversations are undertaken in the form of panel discussions and therefore deliver exposure to all the members who participate and attend the sessions. The sessions conducted are also uploaded onto the YouTube channel of the institutions to allow the students on campus to view and refer the videos on specific topics as and when required, and can be viewed by the future batches. A warm welcome to our principal, Reverend Dr. Charles Lazardo, SJ, our HOD, Suganti Pius, faculty professors, and all the students. I would like to warmly welcome our moderator for the day, Mr. Mahantesh Kumar. Please accept our token of gratitude, sir. An alumnus of SJCC, Mr. Mahantesh changed his festing career from inter-college events in PU to winning international fests during his degree life. Continuing his festing streak, he went on to judge and host numerous international and national fests. He has an inquisitive mind as he tries to master and specialize himself across various fields of interest, mainly in finance and analytics. He takes pleasure in connecting with people. He is a debate buff who's always on deck for conversations around law and diplomacy. Currently, he's working in Deutsche Bank as an analyst in Forex Options and Commodities Department, London. Presenting ComVerse, Episode 16, Gig Economy, a brief look through. A topic that doesn't make the headlines often, but has mainly intriguing aspects. In today's discussion, we'll be talking about origin of freelancing, digital freelancing, entrepreneurship, rising demands in contractual employees, app economy, business models. As an attendee, you are free to interact and bring light to your thoughts on the same. We'll be starting in a while. On your extreme left, we have Kaushik Sridhar from 3BCom A, Shruti K from 3BCom E, our moderator, Mr. Mahantesh Kumar, Kaira Biradar from 2BCom A, Sankalp V. Anand from 2BCom G, and Arish Tranka from 1BCom D. Now we may kickstart with the panel discussion, and now I will officially hand over the discussion to Mr. Mahantesh.
Thank you so much, Akansha, for the wonderful introduction. And good morning, my dear panelists and the audience. So the topic at hand is about gig economy, right? So what exactly is gig economy? So gig economy is kind of the economy which has the free market, which having temporary positions rather than more permanent positions at hand. So people join in on contractual basis to get a particular part of the work, or they mean the entire part of the work done. So a lot of people are mostly focused on a very short skill or short time basis. That's exactly how the gig economy or the economy in general is trying to turn out to be. Because right now when you can see this 56% of the employability in India is only on this short-term basis. So keeping that in mind, so who exactly or whom can you exactly term as a gig economy worker? So as per the Code of Security 2020, it is said that a person who has the same rights or who enjoys the same activities of earning the same amount of money as a permanent worker, but it is outside the relationship of the employer and employee kind of relationship. So that's exactly how the gig worker or the gig economy works as well. And on a fact that in 2019, India is the fifth largest economy which has the most flexible amount of staffs available at this point in time. So keeping all of this in mind on the very general perspective of what exactly gig economy is, let's jump into the more specific aspects about what we can talk about and discuss in this panel right now. Talking about the first major one, so how exactly gig economy came into place? You have something called as freelancers and freelancing, right? So this is exactly how the entire gig economy evolutionized itself in general. So I'm right now going to throw a question to the panelists. So what exactly is freelancing and how exactly does it impact the gig economy in general?
So recently, my friends and I were discussing about freelancing because most of my friends don't want to work under someone because they don't feel like. So they were talking about freelancing, which got me very inquisitive, and I started reading upon it. So I found out that freelancing isn't a very recent thing. It's a very, very big market. Like, for example, in 2018, the freelancing economy was 2.38 billion US dollars, which is expected to grow to about 6.7 US billion dollars in 2025, which is a growth rate of 15% per year. And so I read upon it more, and I found out that freelancing is basically you provide your skill to whoever is employing you on a contractual basis, right? So this isn't really a new phenomenon. It's been there since the time of the crucifixion, and it grew in the Middle Ages, and it was even present during the World Wars. So during the early times, the soldiers, they preferred to work for the country or for the king who paid them the most instead of working for a particular country. If you notice, that time they received a lot of criticism because they were not really patriotic in the public opinion. At the same time, if you see freelancers now, they're not really respected that much because they don't have a 9-to-5 job, they don't have a really schedule, so people just tend to think that they're lazy people. At the same time, the group of soldiers which worked for whoever paid them the most are called the condottieri. And even in the world wars, you can find people who worked for countries which were not really their own home countries. So I researched upon it more, and I found out that there are a lot of advantages of working as a freelancer. The main one, one of the important ones being you can work whenever, wherever, however you want to. So I feel personally that this improves productivity because when you work, when you want and when you like the work you're doing, you feel like working better, right? You feel like working better for the person who's employing you. And then you decide whom to work with. So I feel that the group you hang out with or the group you work with, they play a very important role in what you do, and that improves productivity, and right? And lastly, you keep all the profits. So that's one of the monetizing anything is one of the important factors. So that improves productivity as well as keeps your mind refreshed. And suppose you feel like taking a break at some time and refreshing yourself, rebooting yourself. Freelancing is a very good way to do that. But it's not all jolly. There are a lot of disadvantages as well because there's no real support system. Because if you work in a 9-to-5 job, you will find a lot of friends eventually, people who think like you. And if you don't find it in one company, you'll find it in another company. So they really support you to grow. That support system is missing when you're a freelancer. Also, the payment is very irregular as a freelancer. So because you're not always working, the payments can be very irregular. Therefore, you don't have financial stability unless you follow the really good system of freelancing. And then lastly, there's no professional social life as such because if a lot of freelancing jobs are based on your skill which you can work from home with. So unless you're really socially enthusiastic, you won't really go out and meet new people, which is very important for you to grow in your own career. And after that, I started reading about how I can become a freelancer, which is what I want to do, so hopefully sometime. So every website I read through said that paying your own taxes or learning how to pay your own taxes is the most important thing because even MCOM students, I've heard teachers say that even MCOM students don't know how to file their taxes. So if you learn that, you can actually save a lot of money as well because you'll be paying someone to do your taxes, right? And then keeping a solid client base is very important because, as I said, if you keep a solid client base who depend on you, then you nullify the disadvantage where there is no client system, where there's irregular payments. So you nullify that, As well as you need to make sure every contract you sign is solid and your employer doesn't really use you, because there are a lot of people out there who will just take advantage of you. And lastly, I feel that you should keep a different bank account for your freelancing career and your normal expenses so that you can work more professionally. So that's what I feel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arshit, for the insights. I completely agree with you, because at some point everyone wants to be a freelancer, right? At one point in time, because I myself, even though we are all working in top companies at this point in time, I really do want to know how freelancing works, or I want my freelancing to be the second part of my income which I have. So some way or other, I think every individual enters into the freelancing world at one point in time. But also, like you said, the disadvantages of freelancing is also so much. So until unless you have quite a good equilibrium between these two, I don't think there's much of a chance, right? You get, like you said, exploited a lot. But as you see right now, we are all moving into the digital economy, and we are moving into a different aspect from how it was pre-COVID. Now it's post-COVID. So as COVID came, there's more of digital economy into place. So Sankal, the question goes to you: like, how exactly do you feel that the digital economy and freelancing come into picture here, as to digital freelancing in specific?
All right. So let's keep in mind one thing what Arish has already mentioned, that freelancing and gig economy in general have not been here from past 10 years or 20 years. They've been here from the time, from the time of crucifixion. It's been there throughout the world wars. It's been there for a good amount of time. But the thing is, what makes this a topic right now we are discussing is the fact that due to the access of internet, the scenario is changed completely. Now, when I say this, what I mean exactly is that let's take an example. Back 5 years back, we did not have the whole concept of someone coming and telling you, utilize your digital platforms, or you being that active digitally. But then when COVID struck the world, no one had an option. You just had to go out there. If you're an entity, if you're a business, irrespective of whatever it is, even if you're a student, you had to switch to digital methods. You did not have a choice. The people who did not, or the entities who did not comply by it or had some sort of resistance, incurred a good amount of loss. So that's how important internet is right now. And I feel that it is right of me to say that internet makes up a very crucial pillar for the gig economy. So that's one. Entrepreneurs, again, one more example I can give you is entrepreneurs and startups. Right after COVID struck the world, the amount of startups and the amount of entrepreneurs have just increased. Back in the time, like 5 years before COVID, you did not have these many startups or these many entrepreneurs. But right now, you do have that. So that's about, freelancing. Now, I would like to focus on one specific part, that is your digital freelancing. Now, one example which I could give you guys to relate with digital freelancing as of such is your social media influencers. You open your Instagram, you open your Facebook, you have people promoting watches, clothing brands, accessories, you name it, and it's there. They all fall under the gig economy. It's right to call them freelancers. Because if you notice it, none of them are working full-time for a company. And they're only there to complete a specific task. That task might be marketing this thing or getting some sort of sales. So it's only till that much. And the moment they are done with their work, they are given their incentives for which they were working, and they're done with it. So that's your digital freelancing. Now, one thing which we all must keep in mind when it comes to digital freelancing is the fact that you can't just go out there and ask people to give you work. People think it's easy to go up, just text someone on Instagram and you will get some work or you will get freelance. That's not how it works. The thing is that you need to meet some certain requirements, and that is one of the drawbacks for digital freelancing. For example, it could be minimum number of followers on Instagram. It could be having brand certification from institutes which give you courses on marketing, sales, etc. Whatever your job requires, those skills. So what I personally feel is definitely freelancing and digital freelancing has its advantages and disadvantages. But then gig economy is one of the crucial things right now. So yeah.
thank you, Sankalp. Like rightly said that you need to as much as there is a requirement or a qualification required by the freelancer looking for a job, it's the same case where the person who's going to hire the person also requires the same thing, right? So it's a two-way situation in both the case, and eventually, like as you can see with the way both Arish and Sankalp said, like freelancing is the way where people usually start off with. But then where does the freelancing usually end up? So freelancing usually ends up with you creating your own skill for yourself and you developing your own skills, because you have seen a multitude of different companies working from different people. So you feel that you're more confident and you're more accomplished in the skill set rather than sitting to one particular job. But summarizing this at this point in time, it's just going to lead to entrepreneurship, right? So again, the question goes back to the panel. So who exactly can tell what is the entire pitch of a freelancer turning into an entrepreneur? How exactly is that affecting the gig economy?
Yes, I'll take the topic. So when you think about self-employment, it sounds so good in the theory. There are no bad bosses, no pointless meetings, and you don't have to work for someone else fulfilling their life's missions. But in reality, it's just the opposite. You are stuck with endless meetings and endless, meetings with the clients and the customers and with the board of directors, because the next step is you're trying to expand your startup, where you are stuck with the meetings even though you don't want to. When we think about what is entrepreneurship in this gig economy, we always think there are companies too in the gig economy who has been successful. We talk about there are Amazon, Farm Easy, and then Swiggy, Zomato. These companies, we just name them as the companies who are big four, the startups, the unicorns who have grown up in the market. But in the reality, these are the companies which are successful in the gig economy because they hire the gig workers for the delivery they have to make in a day, which consists of millions of deliveries for each day. They have to go from one place to other and make it. So when they hire the employees, it's lots of work. You have to deal with the payrolls and the allowances which you have to give to the permanent employees. Instead of that, they just hire the gig workers who are a better options available for them. They are like a contract workers. You don't have to provide the security which is provided to an employer, right? So this is an advantages to the companies, to the big for this big force and the other companies, where they utilize this gig workers, which reduces their cost in a very significant way. When we talk about a common person who has started his journey from freelancing to a successful entrepreneur, there is a person known as Michael Brooks, who, in his opinion, says that every freelancer is a potential entrepreneur or a potential startup. So which insane, he had started a startup known as in response to the CRM, where he had hired the freelancers to help him with the startup. And then he expanded it with another freelance website known as GoLanes. And now is presently working on, coming up with again a new startup. As you can see, it's a cycle. You start as a freelancer and then you expand it. When you try to expand it, you start hiring the freelancers once again. He also says that it's a two-way street. It's like a win-win situation because it's very difficult to say when the freelancing ends and where the entrepreneurship begins. As you can see, he was a freelancer, but right now is an entrepreneur. So it's a thin line where you can't differentiate between each other. But again, in terms for an entrepreneur, for that person, he hired the other freelancers and he started with this company, and they have helped him in a very different way. And in fact, these freelancers would help the company to grow in a very effective way because they are the ones who do all the work, right? And again, when we talk about it, it's not an exaggeration to say that the freelancing and the entrepreneurship go in hand. Because once you're a freelancer, you know how exactly the freelancing works. You know the ins and outs of it. the advantages and disadvantage of it. And when you're an entrepreneur and when you're picking the freelancer to do your work, you know whom exactly you have to pick so that your work is done over there. And once the freelancer who has been hired, he knows how the work is done, and he becomes a potential entrepreneur too, because he knows how the work in the entrepreneurship, in the startups works, and he begins with his own company. So that's how it is. So when we look into the facts and figures, as per the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, GEM, has found the gig workers are twice as likely as the wider population to be planning to start a business or to be an early stage entrepreneurs. So the survey has found that 19.24% of people doing gig works for firms like Uber, Amazon, Deliveroo were intending to start a business within the first 3 years compared to the 8.5% of the general population. And while almost 9% consider themselves a nascent entrepreneurs compared to the 4% of all people. A further 25% of the gig workers describe themselves as new or established business owners, suggesting their side hustle is a part of a wider embrace of the entrepreneurship. That's it for this.
Thank you, Shruti, for that in-depth analysis, especially on entrepreneurship and freelancing. So if I'm not wrong, I did listen to the word you said, that there's a very small thin line between freelancing and entrepreneurship. So can you please explain that in detail as to how exactly is the difference between these two? Because it's a very thin line of just a feather, right?
Exactly. So when we talk about the entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur is all about the business. He is a negotiator, is a thinker, and is a visionary. He knows where exactly he has to grow his business with. He has to constantly come up with ideas and constantly come up with strategies so that his startup survives in the market. And he also knows about the business which supports the works. He understands or she understands that without the business controls or the necessities, it is not even a business, it's just a job. Then if you don't have the controls, it doesn't even become a business over there. And then there is an entrepreneur knows that the business either grows or decays, and it is constantly looking for the ways where it can help itself to grow. It has to constantly evolve in this dynamic situation, or it will just perish in the demand where it is not able to live up with the demands which he has to survive in the market. And the entrepreneurs are looking for the vision for the business, and they reflect the business itself. And the entrepreneurs know that time is money, and they invest in the future development of the business and for the vision of the business. And an entrepreneur will pay for the skill, because the skill is what makes them survive in the business. If you don't have the skill which is required for you to take your business ahead, to expand it, you won't even survive. And an entrepreneur has an exact business plan. He knows where he has to start, how to start, and he knows the basic questions which has to be answered by him. So this is what the entrepreneur is.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for that in-depth, on-point validation of how exactly entrepreneurship works. So the next question goes to Arish and Sankalp on the other side as to how exactly is freelancing and entrepreneurship, the difference between these two.
Yeah, so as Shruti has already mentioned it, that an entrepreneur knows exactly what his business is. So that means that he's in center of the business is around him. But when it comes to a freelancer is not in the middle of the business. He's just one of those things that is around an entrepreneur. So the thing is that the entrepreneur knows what he's doing or what they are doing, while they know the in, they know the out. But for the freelancer, it's just the job that's given to them. If you're asked to make sales, you make your sales, and that's about it. There is no more or less to it. That's one thing. And apart from that, and freelancer, it's an optional thing for a freelancer to have a client base. But for an entrepreneur, that's not really an option. You, as an entrepreneur who wants to be successful, you must have a client base. But when it comes to a freelancer, it's an optional thing. It'll help that person or that individual get further jobs. That's one more. One more thing is that entrepreneurs have to invest. They like investing in skills courses, anything that will help them in the future. So if for example, if there's a person who is not good at public speaking, he will go and learn it. He will invest in it, knowing that it will help them out. But then when it's for a freelancer, that's not really a necessity. They don't really have the urge or the need to invest in anything. Even the basics, for example, is provided by their employer. So they just have to come, perform their task, and they have to go. So these are some of the few things that make, freelancers and entrepreneurs different. Even though it's a very thin line, but then they are different. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Sankalp. Well, completely agreeable, guys. I think seeing how the economy is running, as how Shruti said as well, like big companies like Amazon are looking forward for, even though they are employing a lot of permanent-based employees, but they're still looking for freelancers for innovation, creativity, and all of this, and that's exactly what's making the difference. Now, coming to this topic as to how exactly is the connecting between entrepreneurs and the freelancers, right? So freelancers just don't come into picture just because you have a job availability out there. So freelancers, I mean, most of the time, entrepreneurs go to people who are, or agencies in specific. That's what happens in most of the companies around here, right? The major G14s or the major companies around here. So these guys go to agencies and then they hire freelancers. That's exactly how it works. So Kaira, the question goes to you right now, is that how exactly is the rise of this contractual employees and how exactly does this play a role in the gig economy?
Right. So that's a great question, Mantesh. And gig work has been there for a fragmented fashion across the globe. While now new age enterprises like cab hailing services or food aggregators have come up. But the main cause of why there has been a rise is because of the pandemic, COVID-19, and how it's fostered these kind of workers, frontline workers, who have lost a lot of job and they're facing a lot of issues. And it was very easy for the companies to let go of them during tough times, right? So they realized that there's no security in the job when you have to depend on a single employer. So for a gig model, there has been a lot of issues when it comes to employers, and the kind of issues they would face is no flexibility. They would often have to travel long hours and work from a 9 to 5, be dependent on a single employer. And most of them would come out of it unhappy, right? So contractual employers are now looking forward to a new, different, are migrating towards this because they find the flexibility. They find that they don't really have to be committed to just one place, one employer. They have variety of options, and they can also explore stuff and experiment with different categories. They don't have to be stuck. Like if you're a lot of people that are into tech and do something in a company tend to do the same thing for a repeated amount of years. They tend to work in the same place for about 10 years and doing the same thing like a rut work. But when it comes to gig workers, they find that there are more opportunities. They can explore. They can work in different domains, right? So coming to, as they've suffered major losses during the pandemic, a lot of them moved back to their hometowns and they're now looking for income visibility and alternative opportunities with higher income. So as most of y'all might have heard, Meta and Amazon have been laying off people like there's no tomorrow. Like about so many people have just been laid out, like 10,000 employees are getting laid off, and they can be even the software engineers that are apparently the most secure job, So this question about why be dependent on a single employer, why not diversify and look for opportunities where we get more income and also get to experiment, right? Now, and they don't have to be dependent on a fixed salary also. A lot of platforms, like the tech platforms, are bridging this gap and promoting it and boosting it. So they try to ensure that there's a trust on both the demand and supply side. So the enterprise that they're working with and the employers or the freelancers, they both have enough trust while working on the platforms. A lot of machine learning, AI, a lot of these softwares are helping to bridge the gap between the demand and supply, and they're helping find the right opportunities, like LinkedIn and different platforms. LinkedIn just being an example, are providing these tools and right opportunities for both employers. And of course, there has been a lot of untapped opportunities, and the supply obviously exceeding. But yeah, as it's in a very nascent stage and it's growing, so people are figuring out how also this model is going to work and how best it's going to work and function in this new economy. Because till now we were always with this mindset, we need to get into a job, we need to work for a single person, and that's what's going to get us security. But it's not like that. There are a lot of benefits that we're starting to realize with this model in the upcoming years, and I think COVID has made us realize it the most. And it's pushed it to such a extent. Like maybe the gig model would have taken 5 more years to come up and rise. But because COVID happened, it has pushed it to come sooner to us in a lot of areas. Right. One of the most enablers, like government also, Niti Aayog has been trying to ensure that employers are having benefits such as insurance and PF. So these workers also get the same benefits, and their interest is protected throughout all this. Obviously, with this model, there has to be, you need to keep upskilling yourself. You can't just have one degree and be like, yes, please give me a job. No. You have to keep upskilling yourself. You have to take up courses. You have to read out. And that's how your opportunities and there's no such fixed thing as I will get a promotion. You need to keep upskilling. You need to work towards it, and you yourself decide what your promotion is. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Kaira. And like just adding on to your points, I think that's a major impact as to how the entire employability or the workplace is moving towards, right? So it's coming from a place where people thought that being at a job for 10 years is going to give them some kind of stability and some kind of, a thing that, I'm safe right now. But that's not how it's turning out to be. Because the more there are freelancers into place, the companies also do realize that there's a need for innovation and creativity among the employers. So one person just cannot be sticking on to one particular job. He needs to keep upscaling his skills and all of that in order to make sure that he's sustainable and living according to what the current trend or the technological trend, or could be even the innovation is currently going on to, right? So I feel that this is entire complete shift, like what Kaira said, from pre-COVID to post-COVID. There's a complete huge difference which comes into place. So Kaushik, as how you do analyze things onto multiple aspects, what is your analysis on the business models, especially in this particular gig economy?
Okay, thanks Mahantesh for that. I just like to put this out on very simple terms, for the fact that on management terms, managerial terms, the gig economy business models or gig economy based business models have been broken down into three classifications, broad classifications. So this was from the study by Bank of Korea in 2019, and they said that the three classifications. The first one is on-demand business model. Now you can say, you can ask me, how is this related to gig? Because at the end of the day, like somewhere, even if you work in a $1 trillion company or a multi-million company, there is a relation or a connection to gig for the amount and the reach that even big companies out there outsource simple operations to freelancers, and even interns can be considered as a part or a small pinnacle in the big crux of gig. So what I'm saying is, in the on-demand business model, it is something as simple as as she said, Amazon. It's just simple product being delivered to customer. So there's a buyer and the seller, customer satisfaction level, and customer how the product is delivered fast and stuff like that. And in this case, a lot of companies, or rather that's how the whole business world works, right? Like you have a product, you have a seller, you have a buyer. And so on demand is something where the reach is very simple. You go even to the grocery store. During COVID and all, it was done at the tap of a phone call. Now the second part of it is called sharing business model or sharing economy. Now sharing happens on two broad classifications. That is, one is product based and the other one is space based. Now the thing is, as Mahan was saying, even though you have a big company or a part of a big company, you need to keep constantly innovating and stuff. So I think a lot of people here must have seen or heard about Google's entrepreneurs. So this is something like, Google has this entrepreneur developing culture and self-developing culture basically. So they have, workers or employees within the organization who are encouraged and empowered to start up on their own, pitch business ideas every other day, and maybe even earn a share of their profits. So that's how sharing comes into play here, because you share space from your employer, you share knowledge, you share profits, resources, labor, etc. And the second part, I feel there's another example that has beautifully come across for sharing, that is Airbnb. Now, so how does it start for Airbnb? You go to the website or the app, and then through that you go to a space. That your space can be a room, flat, apartment, whatever. And then you have your people who work there. For example, there is obviously going to be a guy who's going to be like, "Hi sir, welcome to your room. Can I escort you?" and stuff like that. So if you realize, Airbnb is such a platform that is not just built by one person. So the space is from an outsourced. It's from an outsourced area. The labor is completely outsourced, and the app as well. So all these three coming together makes the product, right? So that is the sharing business model. And now, finally, we go on to the platform-based business model, which has become a huge hit, especially post-COVID. I think Kaira and Sankalp also mentioned this. Now, the thing is, platform-based. Now, again, here we draw it into broad classifications. So whatever I'm saying can be actually kind of mind mapped or Venn diagramified or whatever. So the thing is, platform-based, one is your entertainment platform. That is, you have your Netflix, Prime, Hotstar, Amazon. So behind every movie that we watch, there is the work and development of so many people that goes into, which can be either outsourced or, their company. Why I'm saying it's a possibility of being outsourced is because even in the biggest companies, there is a part of gig somewhere. That is, I kind of began like that, right? Like trillion-dollar companies also outsource their operations to different people. And the second one of platform-based is your education. So, ed tech, the industry, or even fintech for that matter. So many people started pursuing courses, upskilling. I think Sankalp was talking about upskilling here, where a freelancer needs to upskill, and for him it's bigger clients, bigger business. That's all his profit is. It's not a specified hike. So the thing is, on platform there were so many platforms like Coursera, Udemy, or even there was this study which said that during COVID lockdown, so many people wanted to, majority of the people, what they did is they wanted to learn a new skill, and that need not be a technical skill. It was as simple. They wanted to pick up and learn a new musical instrument, or even vocal or singing. So the thing is, the demand for online guitar classes kind of just shot up. It was a boom in that graph. Like even I was surprised. I was like, bro, what's going on? But at the same time, it kind of reflects on how technology has become the backbone of the entire gig economy. Now, because there are platforms which do this, there are individual teachers also. Like my friend learns guitar from a teacher who's not, linked with an institution on particular. So this is the sharing kind of economy. And now what we kind of see is that, whichever economy or business model you take, it's somewhere linked to a bigger economy, and without that, I don't think any of us can even survive today. That is the app economy, because today life has kind of come to a pause if you don't have apps. That's the situation we are living in. For all the people who can say technology is not, the best thing. There are people who see technology as a pain. There are people who see technology as a pain. There are people who see demerits of technology, and, they say screen time and stuff. But we've come to such an extent today that, we work so much on the phone. I work more on the phone than on a laptop. Of course, there are things like Excel and coding which I have to relapse to my laptop tomorrow. But at the same time, I think phone kind of makes it so convenient. Why? because of apps. So now this talking about this huge bubble of app economy, in 2021 alone, this app economy market has warped and hit a figure of $6.3 trillion, which is not a joke, which is a definitely larger than life figure. And I also got to know the statistic from Apple that from April 2019 to September 2020, they just based for iOS App Store, right? I'm talking only about App Store. So to develop apps, app developers, and the whole iOS fragmentation of Apple, there were almost 300,000 people given jobs or employment, which is again great. So it increases your national income, GDP, and overall Apple's goodwill, putting it, of course, one of the biggest companies out there. So, I mean, coming back from Apple, coming back from the business models, coming back to gig, there are so many things which my dear panelists mentioned, like Shruti, Kaira, Sankalp, and Arish, and of course Mahan, Mr. Mahan. So the thing is that, gig kind of somewhere resonates with the fact that you can do anything at your time. And I would like to conclude here by saying that why gig plays such an important role out of all the things that I've connected towards gig now. I connected the business models towards gig, saying that there is an outsourcement. I connected app economy, saying that there might be an app developer working remote across the globe, an a guy from India working for a US client. Now the thing is, I would like to conclude by saying that gig is something developed from the pop culture, the name. But gig here resonates with freedom, and most importantly, gig resonates with convenience. It's your time, your work, your will. What you have to do is gig it out.
Thank you so much, Kaushik, for the excellent explanation on how exactly the business model works in the gig economy. Just summarizing as to how the entire conversation has taken place, I thank you so much, panelists, for the in-depth explanation on each of your topics, because that's quite inquisitive as to what was told, and I think it's been on point, and exactly the audience required this kind of an explanation to get an insight into this, right? So just summarizing this, I feel that it's all depending on what aspect you look into it and what kind of an economy or what kind of a generation are you stepping into. Because the previous generation was all on manual kind of works. You're looking into manual perspectives, and the innovation was there, but the technological aspects couldn't help them, the curb the innovation which they had. But then right now we have so much of technological placements where you have kids these days programming and coding. So that's exactly shows what kind of competition you have. That gives more place to freelancers, that gives more place for the companies to hire freelancers at the same time to get innovative at their pace. And at the same time, you're giving agencies to have contracts based. They're acquiring more people. You know what? I'm going to give you a job. Come join me. Come join. That's how exactly agencies goes, right? And agencies work on the other way around, where they are going to give you the skill set to, analyze, and they're going to help you get those jobs. That's exactly how other agencies works as well. And then you have another place where you have entrepreneurs looking forward for freelancers. And again, every single aspect over here is getting connected in some way or other in a very huge aspect. I mean, we are talking on a very, very small scale. This is the most basic explanations which we have been giving over here. But then the impact it's having on the economy is such a huge that we only know it either in the way of profits or in something called as doing good to someone's life. That's exactly how we can measure the impact of a particular company, right? So that's it from my side as well. And thank you so much, panelists. And right now we're open for questions.
Yeah, now I open the floor for question and answers. Okay, volunteer?
This question is open to any of the panelists. So this question is specific to the Indian economy. So everyone mentioned gig economy and how it applies on the urban setting. I want to know what is the potential for gig economy in the rural settings, because all the jobs right now that are available in the gig economy only apply to very skilled workers and to specific skills that you can probably hire online and get it done digitally. And now, because gig economy is moving into as a primary source of income for many people, what do you think the rural workers and the rural setting would contribute in the gig economy?
Good question. So I would like to answer this by saying that, so of course, even even the great Mahatma Gandhi has said that India is nothing without its villagers and farmers. So, coming from that perspective and coming from such a rich, laden land that way, I feel there is so much scope that hasn't been tapped on yet. With respect to agriculture and farming, as you said. Now, not only agriculture and farming, but even the rural setting for that matter. So, today there is so much of, the intelligence growth of humans has also come up so high that people want to pursue something out of the box. Like tomorrow, a gig freelancer, a young man, can actually go and start a company which specializes in drone fertilizers. And there can be, this is a fact, okay? So I was going up on Amazon and I found that cow dung cakes are being sold. Have you guys seen this before? Yeah. So I think that's a great step, because at the end of the day, nobody in factory makes cow dung cakes. It's all back from the villages and stuff. Now, coming from that perspective, how to uplift the rural, as Mr. Mahantesh also said that, it can either be lifting up for a cause or, your own product to be developed. So I think this, to address the question, gig economy has immense, potential to actually tap on rural resources and come up, because today the youth have fantastic ideas. If it's put in the right place, I think it's going to boom.
Can I add on to that? So I feel that the gig economy in itself will help the rural economy in a twofold way. First of all, the trickle-down effect. So I feel when people in urban areas, when they work as gig workers, they themselves will hire people, the household help, for example. So household help, a lot of household help comes from rural areas, so they earn more in urban areas than what they would have in their own hometowns, and they send the money back as remittances, right? So that money itself is used to upskill their families in rural areas. So those upskilled people can start working as gig workers, or a lot of times the people where they work as, they mentor them, right? So they mentor the children of who they are working at. And also another thing is, we see how the prices are going up for agricultural products. At some point, somebody would come up and say that we'll directly sell to the buyer. They wouldn't want to go through the whole process. So at some point, they will sell directly, and that will help the farmers and the rural sector a lot, because that will increase what they're getting paid already. So I feel that's how it's going to help.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys?
My question is to Arish. So you earlier mentioned how due to freelancing one's social career might come to a stagnation, but isn't it counter-initiative that due to freelancing only, due to networking, it's like one of the core pillars of freelancing?
I mentioned that how the professional life of a person might come to stagnation, because a lot of freelance workers work on skills which they can work from home, as like coders, and even a teaching institute for teachers at Byju's don't really need to go out everywhere, because they can teach from home. So that really stops them from growing. But that is in particularly for these kind of skilled workers. But a lot of people do have to go out there, and they'll have to meet new people, so that'll help them go. As I said, if you're socially enthusiastic, then you will go out. But if your skills are limited to work from home, then you may not go out, which can limit your growth. That's what I said.
I just adding on, I think the entire perspective comes onto an individual who's a freelancer as to whether he wants to socialize with the place he's working on, or does he just want to get the work done or not. I think Irish explains it completely on that. Any other questions, guys?
No more questions? Okay. Now I would like to call upon Sahil Akhawat, the Assistant Coordinator, to give the vote of thanks.
A warm and graceful afternoon to one and all present here. I am Sahil Akhawat, the Assistant Coordinator of ComVerse, And it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks speech and acknowledge the contribution made by the moderator, the panelists, and members of the audience. Quote, listen with the will to learn. Unrein Romaro, unquote. I would like to take the opportunity to put all my gratitude into words on behalf of the BCom department and ComVerse Association to thank our moderator, Mr. Mahantesh Kumar, for taking his precious time out of his busy schedule and consenting to be the moderator. Thank you, sir, for moderating this panel discussion and helping it to be informative, enlightening, and inspiring. We request you to accept this plaque as a token of appreciation. Thank you, sir. We are fortunate to be guided by our Reverend Dr. Charles Lasrado, SD. Sir, you have been a constant source of support and encouragement and pushed us to pursue and achieve excellence. Thank you, sir. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Suganti Pais, HOD of BCom department. Thank you, ma'am, for motivating, guiding, and helping us in organizing this panel discussion. I would like to thank my coordinator, Ms. R. Akansha, who put together this amazing team of panelists, and thank the panelists and her for working day in and out for weeks to prepare for this event with zeal and zest. Lastly, I would like to thank all my fellow Josephites for enthusiastically being part of this panel discussion and motivating our panelists. Thanking you and signing off, Sahil Akhawat.